brother-in-law messaged me and said, "Happy Father's Day, bro. Hope you had a great day." And I said, "I did. I hope you did too." And then he responded back, "P." So, what do you think that means?
That could have been a child's text. That could have been like one of the kids got a hold of his phone, but
and it handed his phone to the 4-year-old and said, "Here, you respond on Father's Day. Go for it." I'm like,
speaking of though, I will also say Happy Father's Day, Steve.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, Happy Father's Day, guys. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Hope it was a good near second one, I guess, right? But first one with a kid that is, a first full year of being a father, I suppose.
Yeah, the first one kind of felt like I was cheating.
Yeah,
right?
I don't even deserve this. It's only been
like I was barging in on everyone else's holiday. I was like, sorry guys, apologies. But it's like objectively this year, it's like, all right. It actually went great. I'm gonna show you these. I'm gonna take one of my socks off for you. That's how good of a day it was. I'm stripping down.
Oh wow.
Heck yeah.
Leah got me these socks for Father's Day. They're already disgusting, but they got my cat's face and Quinn's
that's
face on them.
amazing. I love that.
That's so good.
They're so good. So
That's
I got
awesome.
those and went out for lunch. Got a nice Philly cheesesteak crepe, which sounds weird, but is ridiculously good.
I mean,
Savory
it's-
crepes are the
good.
future, man.
It makes sense. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's Philly cheesesteak sub bun or submarine bun for crepe, I suppose.
Yeah,
right. So
just throw
I guess
a crepe. Yeah, throw the Philly cheesesteak, some green bell peppers and some onions in there. Ooh,
Yeah, that's the
it's
good
so
stuff.
good. So, no complaints today, man. It's been a great Father's Day.
Speaking of Philly cheesesteak, there's a kind of a chain in Michigan. It's called Lefty's, and they have amazing Philly cheesesteaks. I love their chicken Philly cheesesteak, and I'm going to get to go up to Detroit, unfortunately, for work this week, but I'm absolutely going to Lefty's because I haven't had to travel. Like when we first started this, right? I was traveling a lot at that time, but I don't travel at all anymore. I'm usually at my house. So one of the perks of getting to go again, or every once in a while, is getting to visit old locations that I used to go to. So I'm pretty
A
excited.
chicken Philly cheesesteak sounds so good, dude.
I'm telling you, this place is like, it is almost like a Penn Station. I don't know if you guys have Penn Stations or not. I think Penn Station's pretty, or Firehouse Sub or something like that. Like
Firehouse Sub, yeah.
it's fairly chainy
Firehouse, yeah.
feeling, but it's only in Michigan, from what I know. And there are quite a few in Michigan, but it is one of the best Philly cheesesteaks I've ever had, especially out of like a fast foodie type place. It is so good. So
Heck yeah.
Nice.
Love it. Big fan. Well, hey, you're going to be in Detroit, so that's only like 10 hours from me. Let me know if you want to hang out. You can hop on over to Minnesota. And just,
I thought you were offering this time, but no, I guess, yeah, okay. I'll come to you again, Steve.
I'll meet you halfway. We can meet in,
Milwaukee.
I don't know, it'll be halfway between the two. Milwaukee, Chicago, maybe like Rockford or something is halfway between
Yeah,
the two.
there you go. Yep, that's about right. Yeah.
Stop in Rockford and eat at Denny's and
The middle of Lake Michigan somewhere.
yeah. All right. I'm ready to talk about video games.
3, 2,
Two,
1,
one, go.
go.
Bro, where was your go? My go was on time. You fell off, man.
Oh, me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Honestly, as long as
How good are you at rock band drums?
I would say I could do most songs on hard, depending
Okay.
to medium. I'm not the best, but I can get by. I'm not
You
super
got a
ambidextrous
white
with
man's
drums,
rhythm,
I've noticed.
I gotta say.
Yeah. With Guitar Hero, I'm really good, but that's just
Yeah.
because I practiced for 100,000 hours when I was a kid, so that's why.
Nice. Dude,
at
so good.
Steve's wedding, they were all playing Rock Band, and I was going to jump in there for a second, be like, I just need somebody to plug in a controller, though. I'll play guitar because that's how I know. I think I've told that story before, but that's the only way I know how to
man.
play.
I would have hooked up the controller for you.
Hey, that's-
shred, man. Shred.
That's like
Yeah.
serious capital G gamer
Gotta
pulling
that
out a
is-
Xbox
controller.
just
It's the inverse. Everyone always, goes viral with the video of them beating Elden Ring with the guitar
With the
controller. It's like, what about beating Guitar Hero with the Elden Ring controller? Okay.
Oh, perfect.
That's funny.
All right, bring us in, Josh. Bring us in.
Okay. See if my white guy rhythm can bring us in properly here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to IndieQuest, the celebration of the indie and obscure. Your home for video game talk of the indie variety. And I'm one of your hosts today, Josh, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host. I'm going to throw it to Seth today, the captain himself, Captain Drachma. How are you doing?
Doing quite well. Extremely, I wouldn't say extremely, but quite crispy today. I was outside for quite a little bit. Went over to my dad's. I think I mentioned before, I grew up on a farm. My dad was baling some hay today and was out there by himself. He's kind of worked it out to be a one-man operation, so he just bales, and then he goes out with his bale wagon contraption thing to pick up the bales. But I called him, like, oh man, that's what you're doing on Father's Day? That's a bummer. So then I was like, well, I was over there a couple days ago and you were complaining about your lawn. Did you ever mow your lawn? No. Okay, I'll come mow your lawn. And anybody's seen a farmer's lawn, it's usually quite large. I was there for a while, right? So, and as farmers do, pieces of equipment all over the place. So I was mowing around basically everything. It was like an obstacle course out there. But I got some sun today, and it's getting quite hot. Anyway, How was your Father's Day, Steve?
Hi, yeah. It was wonderful. Thank you for asking. We were talking in the virtual green room. I had a delicious Philly cheesesteak crepe, which set the tone for the rest of my day. I mowed no lawns, which is the amount of lawns I want to mow on Father's Day. And otherwise, it was good. Just hung out with the kiddo. It is ridiculously hot here. It was like kind of sneaky. I walked up in the morning with him to grab my Americano, as I tend to do every morning, and I was like, almost feeling guilty that I put the kid in shorts. I was like, it's a little brisk out here. It just rained the night before. I was like, oh, poor kid, you're freezing. And then he wakes up from his nap, and we step back outside, and it's like 30 degrees hotter and so muggy. And so I was like, all right, I guess we're gonna play inside today. That's how we're spending our time.
Well, I'm not a father, but I like to play video games, and I guess it makes me kind of a parent to video games, right? No? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a segue there. There was no segue. I don't know.
No. That's the best you could do with the situation you had.
You can be our indie daddy.
Okay. Well, the Indie Dad is here to talk about indie games. It was Summer Game Fest. It's basically what E3 is nowadays, right? You guys are big fans of like the summer game announcements. Do you get excited? Do you watch them all and all that? Or do you kind of like just wait for everything to go and just watch trailers after the fact? How do you go about doing that?
I don't watch all of the different presentations because there's so many like smaller ones at this point. That it's almost impossible to keep up. But I do always make it a point to watch like the big Summer Games Fest live, like the Keighley presentation, the E3 equivalent. And I feel like I'm maybe a little bit of an outlier in being a bit of a defender of Summer Games Fest. Like certainly the show could be improved, and there's plenty to comment on in terms of like the types of games they highlight and how kind of like overproduced and corny a lot of it is. But I think it's a good thing in general that we have like a big tentpole event that we can all like get excited about, watch together. I don't think that the cynicism that goes towards it is really 100% warranted, or maybe I just wish that we approached it in a little bit more of an equal measure, right? There was a little positivity to counteract all the snark, because man, after Games Fest goes off, you go on frickin' Twitter and it is just sass for like 2 days. People just being quippy and dunking.
Like, Jeff, how dare you? Like they have such a like indignant attitude for his like presentation. He's not making every game out there. He's just going to people like, what do you got to show? And then he, packages it together. Like, chill, right?
Yeah. And it's just like, at this point, I think most people should understand what those presentations are, right? We've watched like 30 of these over the years between E3 and Summer Games Fest. Like, the types of games that make it into these things, and kind of generally how they operate. if you've already decided that's not for you, you don't have to watch it just to snark on it. But that said, it could be improved. So yeah, I watched it. How about you, Seth?
I think I've mentioned in the past, I don't typically watch this type of stuff unless, like, I don't watch it live, right? I will go and find a recap site and comb through the announcements and whatever, sparks my interest. I'll go watch a trailer maybe, which is kind of what we did for some stuff we're going to discuss here in a couple minutes. But I'm not someone who sits and watches all 2 hours of those types of things. Unless, for example, Steve is streaming something, I'll watch it then. But I would not seek it out myself, right? That's kind of, and I've mentioned in the past how I will just be on Steam perusing, and that's not 80% of the time. That's how I find my games. It's just, oh, that looks cool. It's very much going to a Walmart and looking and finding the coolest looking cover and seeing. Right. Fortunately, we can look up a review or two here or there to see if it's actually decent. But I'm not. I don't understand this, and it's like Steve said, I don't understand why people get so upset about these types of things. Just don't watch it if you don't like it. And you know what? If enough of those types of people aren't watching it, then they'll change it because they're not going to make anything on it. Like, that's how business works, right? So, but
exactly. I feel that way about 3 game-related things. I feel that way about Summer Games Fest, GameStop, and limited run games. I feel like those 3 things, all of the opinions have already been shared, so now it's just your time to dip out or carry on.
Right.
But yeah, I did the same kind of thing. I watched a lot of the trailers after the fact. I didn't get to watch this one live, but I like the hype. I like the hype of the moment.
Yeah.
Even if I think Seth's way of finding games is the truest and most pure out there, and I'm envious of it. I think that's genuinely the best way to do it, but I am too online for that.
Honestly,
same here.
I feel like I am pretty online, but maybe I'm just like old person online. Like, I am not getting my information from the correct sources. I get so much of my info from our Discord, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that does look cool. I'll go look it up now. Versus being on the ground floor, like ground zero, and finding this stuff as soon as it releases. So I don't think that will change about me anytime soon. So if anyone out there enjoys that about me, that I don't care in the moment, then hey, I'm your co-host, Captain Drachma.
I mean, I like how they do it though. Now, like, I think they've been doing this for like 3 years. Is they'll do like the Game Fest, like the big hype thing, and then they'll just like do like a musical interlude, and then they're like, it's Day of the Devs, and I'm like, hell yeah, let's watch some indie, like really cool, like cherry picked indie stuff. And then they do when it gets a little bit later at night, they do the Devolver Direct, which usually only has like a few games, but it's like just bad shit, because it's Devolver. So they had a couple announcements in there too. So yeah, and then after that, I'll watch like, if there's like a Xbox One or like a PlayStation thing, I'll watch those. But the little other ones, I'll kind of just look at articles, because there's like 50 of them now. There's like Futures Game Show, there's like Wholesome Games, and then there's like this one and that one. So it's kind of like, just you're gonna be sitting there for like 24 hours watching just showcases if you wanted to watch them all, because there's so many.
Yeah, and I trust generally that between the two of you and a couple of the folks in the Discord that kind of understand my taste, that any trailer that came your way that you saw, especially from one of those smaller shows that aren't the main show, one of the showcases from the big publishers, the big 3 publishers, or Day of the Devs, that you'll just send it my way. Like, not to put the burden on all of you to do my work and research for me, but I trust that anything that is truly my vibe, someone will share with me, so I'm not that worried about missing it.
That is what is nice about us being a part of this platform, is our listeners and a lot of our friends understand our tastes, so they can be like, hey, you'd be into this. I'm like, hey, thank you, I appreciate it. I don't have to go seek it out myself.
I'll get down on that. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of proposed a little homework for us to, instead of talking about every single announcement, let's each pick 3, like a top 3, like we're most like excited about from the Summer Game Fest, and kind of like go around the table here and just talk about them, and get some hype going for these games, maybe expose some of these games to people we haven't heard about them. So who wants to go first for their top 3?
I'm happy to go first. Yeah. And I narrowed it down to a small handful of games here. I personally didn't stick to games that were new announcements during this event. Any game that was shown had something new shown about it, but I just kind of picked of the indie stuff shown. Here are the 3 indies that were featured in one of these showcases that I'm most excited about. I think everything I have was either in the Summer Games Fest showcase or Day of the Devs. But my first one is a game that I think we've even talked about a little bit on the show before. And this is the first time we saw like a real good meaty chunk of gameplay from it. And it's Neva from Nomada Studios, who did Grease. And it is basically Grease 2. Like, you watch it, it is extremely their style. It has that like very painted, not quite watercolor, but close, like really flowy, kind of like floaty animation. Everything just feels like natural, good in motion. It's like, it's a game that looks like it's running at a high FPS, even if it's not running at a high FPS, because it's just so smooth and buttery. And there's tons of, variety in color and pastels and stuff like that. And this was, the gameplay they showed was cool because it showed off this sort of pair duo protagonist that you're going to be playing through, which is going to be this main girl and this like dog wolf creature. We had seen that in the teaser from last year or the year before, whenever it was first announced, but now we're seeing that, that will actually be like a gameplay component. These two will be working together to do, sort of Grease style puzzle platformy bits. Looks like there's a bit of like what I'm assuming is like a time progression or a time jump, because they show this animal at various stages of their life, like, little puppy being all excited, and then they grow into like this big wolf that's like larger than she is, kind of Princess Mononoke energy to it all. And it just got me re-hyped for a game that I was already hyped enough to play, but it was kind of nice to see the gameplay and like firmly solidify it as, yep, I'm definitely pretty much day one on this one is my type of game for sure. And looked beautiful. Very excited.
Yeah, I like they showed a little bit of combat in that, and the combat actually looked pretty smooth. I don't know how difficult the game's going to be or anything, but the combat itself looked fun to play, on top of it just being gorgeous. So yeah, definitely on my radar as well.
Yep.
Speaking of Grease, that is a pretty glaring omission from the quest log currently. I have that one sitting in my library, so that might end up, although we haven't been fighting with each other about who's going to bring it up to this point, but I have a feeling whoever brings that's going to be disappointed, because the other people don't get to bring it eventually. So
yeah,
hopefully one of us brings that soon. But an announcement, a game that was announced that I would like to chat about, was one called Deer and Boy. Did you guys see a little bit about Deer and Boy? So I
did, but I'm going to pull up footage of it while we talk to remind myself.
It looks kind of like a cinematic platformer. You're running around as this small child in the snow, at least from what the trailer looks like. And you eventually stumble upon a baby, it looks like a baby deer that is lost. And initially is spooked of the little boy, but then it seems like they form a camaraderie and move on together to progress throughout wherever they're lost in the woods or something. I don't feel like we found out a lot about what's going to happen, which is totally fine. Art style is super nice, super pretty, kind of that very glowy construction paper look a little bit with the characters, but also the lighting effects are super, super good. But this just honestly reminded me a lot of games like Planet of Lana, and I can really
Limbo,
Limbo,
Inside,
yes, and I can always get down with one or two of those types of games a year, right? Usually pretty frictionless, but a good lighthearted story that you don't have to delve into some lore about. Like, you're going to understand what's going on by the time you finish. Not too difficult gameplay wise, so. Yeah, I will be excited when that one releases. Deer and Boy.
Yeah, looks really cool. I think it's a first game from this developer, as far as I can tell. And what I'm excited for, as specific as this is most of what they showed was outdoor environments that you're navigating around.
Yeah.
And I feel like these types of games do well in like foresty settings and just outdoor terrain in general, when you're not just going through like a dark warehouse the whole time. So yeah,
Right, because
for sure I'll play that too.
so often with the cinematic platformers, they can do the layering, right? And forest helps, where it's like there's trees in the background, trees in the foreground. So there's, ways that you can hide behind certain trees. And so it just works really well with these types of games. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it has great presentation.
Yes.
And speaking of presentation, for my third pick here, I picked a game called Possessors. And the S is like, has like parentheses around it. So it's Possessors. And this is a new universe from the minds of Hyper Light Drifter and Solar Ash, and they're teaming up with Devolver Digital to make a side-scrolling action adventure with hand-drawn main characters. And if you guys look at some gameplay for this, it's up all of our alleys. It's like looks very beautiful, like kind of like neon and sun-soaked. It has that look to it, and it's like a lot of dark backgrounds with really high contrast, bright visuals, and just very fast and frenetic gameplay. And it's they kind of hinted that it might be a gated exploration game. There's not too much about what the gameplay is going to be, but it is a linear game with open environments where you kind of like piece out where to go next. So it sounds like it's Metroidvania gated exploration type of game. But the minds behind Hyper Light Drifter, Hyper Light Breaker, and Solar Ash, they're going to make something awesome. So that's just the studio with some pedigree.
The whole having a relatively 2D character play on a 3D plane type of deal, like you're still walking on a 2D, right? Back and forth. It's a side scroller.
Yep.
That's been done a lot of times, but this might be one of the prettiest versions of that type of game that I have ever seen. The 3D backgrounds are absolutely gorgeous, and I don't know that I've ever seen this type of style. It's so good. I'm also very excited for this.
Yeah, beautiful one. And I mean, Heart Machine to this point is one of those studios that just gets an instant guarantee that I will play their games. They basically have never missed. Even Solar Ash, which I think was their weakest, was still solid. So like I will absolutely be there on that one. All right. Am I up again already?
Yep.
Yes, you are.
All right. So the second one here, this one I think was newly announced. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, if this has been shown elsewhere, but this is the first time I remember seeing anything about it. And it is a game called Wanderstop. So it is from a studio that I think is a newly formed studio, but I think the sort of tagline developer that is working on this is the guy that did the Stanley Parable. And Wanderstop, it's also published by Annapurna, so you understand why I'm bringing it, but it's a cozy game. Like it could, at the beginning it could have looked like it was in the Wholesome Games Showcase. You're doing the very stereotypical, Fae Farm, Harvestella style. You're running a shop in some magical village and you're brewing potions and gathering herbs and, putting them together and trading them for resources and all that stuff. But then like towards the end of the trailer, the main character has this sort of like internal argument with herself where she's basically like, you can tell that she is in some sort of anguish or she is like mentally distressed and is struggling to convince herself that she is content with living like a cozy farm life, even though clearly she like wants to be, we don't know, wants to be returning to her past or like fighting, being more violent than she is. And so in the end, I think it will ultimately be a subversion of that genre. Like it will be sort of like throwing the tropes of that genre on its head, and probably this is the type of game I could see going places, right? Like there's just that little bit of dialogue like tickles my inscription sensor a little bit, where I'm like, is there something more going on in this world than meets the eye? They haven't really suggested that too much, but I'm like, I don't know. The game, when you look at the footage, is so kind of like generic in terms of that cozy feel.
Right.
And when they put that, but then overlay the text from the mind of the Stanley Parable, like I'm like, okay, you're doing something. I trust you. Like I know
here, yeah.
your whole shtick is like pushing conventions or like challenging the player or flipping genres upside down, right?
How would you feel, Steve, if you... I agree this game looks cool, but how would you feel if you picked up this game with an expectation, didn't look anything up, and then you put 10 hours into it and got credits and all you ever did was farm?
Honestly, I'd be like, all right, you got my ass, but I'm not buying the next one. like that's the true meta, is to subvert my expectation of subversion to flip it back to the way it started.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will just be the game that gets me into farming sims and nothing else. But
exactly,
it's my gateway to Stardew Valley. But yeah, it seems very cool. And again, it's got everyone involved in it. Just perks my radar a little bit.
Awesome.
I think that looks cool. I like that it doesn't tell you anything, the trailer, if you watch it. It's like, okay, it looks cute, nice, and then from the makers of Stanley Parable, and then there's something eerie about it at the end, and you're like,
yes,
wait,
there's a little
what is that
sinister
going to
energy.
be? Yeah. So definitely, I don't want to know anything about this game, and I kind of want to just like download it and just go in and see what it's all about, because they just gave me just enough to like latch on. So definitely looks cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So my second game here is, I suppose, flirting on the whole indie thing, but I did make sure that the developer considers themselves to be indie, and they do. And that is Phantom Blade Zero. Did you guys see this trailer?
I did, yeah. Who's the developer again, though?
S-Game.
S-Game. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, they're out of Beijing, China.
Okay.
But they did another Phantom Blade game and then only one other game. And they're developing and publishing. But this is like the crispiest indie game I've ever seen in my life. It literally looks like FromSoft made it. So, and that's all I really need to say, right? I am a huge FromSoft fanboy. This game looks like a mixture of Dark Souls and Devil May Cry, or it almost looks like Sekiro in a lot of ways, although I hope that there's not so much focus on parrying, because I don't love to have to parry in my video games. I would prefer to dodge in most cases, but regardless, it is a gorgeous looking game. The combat looks extremely slick. Like, extremely slick. It almost looked a little bit too fast for my taste. Like, I like a good momentum, physics-based combat game, right? I don't like to just fly all over the place like Devil May Cry and put a bunch of combos together and do 50 hits at once, right? But this looks like it could absolutely tickle my fancy in that FromSoft Souls-like type of way.
It does look gorgeous, man.
Yes.
Like, I could see myself wanting to play this after hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, it has a lot of style. Like,
it does.
What's the game that's going to get me into this genre, guys? Like, I've been trying for years. I don't know. But
I mentioned, Josh, on Steve's stream the other day that I'm going to be playing that a lot of games consider themselves to be Souls-likes. But I'm going to play a game that is a Souls-like, and I'm going to bring it here within the next month or two. And I think it could be the type of gateway game that you would need to get yourself into this type of genre. Okay. So hopefully I'll be able to talk to you about that one.
Right. Like, I played Elden Ring for 10 hours and like I had fun with it, and then I just like hit a wall, and I'm like, I know with that game you're supposed to like go explore different directions and all that. I was just like, all right, I'll get back to it. And you know how it is. You like, I'll get back to it, and then you never do. So yeah, we'll see.
Elden Ring for me, I know this is an indie game podcast, of course, but Elden Ring is, if you like open world, then you can get into Elden Ring, and that will make you like FromSoft. Or you already like FromSoft, you're probably going to be into Elden Ring. If you're not into either genre, then I don't know how many open world type games you play, Josh, but to me, it probably will end up making a person bounce off if they're not into either of those genres already. So I could understand.
Yeah, I can get into an open world game. It just really depends. And I thought it was an interesting game, but But anyway, that is a genre I do want to break through and like get into one day. So hopefully that happens before I can no longer play those games because I'm too slow and old. Anyway, speaking of things that are old, or things that are you finished with Phantom Blade?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. All right. Speaking of things that are old or seem like they're old, the game I got pretty excited for, they actually finally have a release date for it, UFO 50.
Yeah, that was my last one too.
Was that on your
nice.
last one? Okay, nice. So basically, it tells the story of a fictional developer called UFO Soft that created a console that existed between 1982 and 1990, and players can play through the console's entire 50-game library in chronological order, seeing the progression of its technology over time. I just think it's such an ambitious title. But Steve, it's your number one. Anything you want to talk about with it?
Yeah. So first off, to get folks like excited in the talent behind it, it's from a studio that is, I think, sort of like creatively led by Derek Yu, the individual that did Spelunky and Spelunky 2. And he has collaborated with a bunch of different game developers, because the whole pitch is UFO 50 is 50 games that came out for this fictional console. And they are like, it is like a console library. It is every genre of game. There are shoot 'em ups, there are sports games, there are dungeon crawler RPGs, there are turn-based RPGs, there are gated explorations. It is like a fully, there's like a super dodgeball equivalent. It's a full library of video games. And normally I would be a little bit hesitant, because I feel like when other games try to like do the thing where they're like, we are all the genres in one, it usually just ends up being very shallow. And like, you're like, oh, well, it's just like, it's like a meal of like 8 to 12 different types of crackers. It's like, okay, I'm just not that full or that satisfied. But the way that he's been working with like other developers, where I imagine it's kind of like, hey, this is sort of your shtick, develop me a game, or at least like design and pitch the idea of a game that I can work on, makes me think that they'll be a little bit more robust than some of those other games will be. Also, this game has had like a massively long development cycle. Like, this game was supposed to come out several years ago at this point, so
yeah,
they have had,
I think it was
time.
like 2020, right? Like 2020 was the original like release window, I think, and now it's 4 years later. So it's like
exactly. So it just sort of feels like it's like like a super team of developers working to create a bunch of games and packaging them up under one label. So I'm super pumped for this one. I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's one of those I've been kind of following, and it's one of that doesn't have a lot of information about it. And the reason I've been following it is because I like Derek Yu. I think he has good opinions on video games. I feel like he always sharing like some obscure indie game I've never heard of. He has like a Steam curator page with a bunch of just like small quirky titles, and like I feel like he just has an eye and just he's really good at game design. Obviously, Spelunky 1 and 2 are great games, which that's another omission from the quest log. Sure. I don't know if anybody here's beaten those games, but they play very well and they're very fun, and they're very well designed. Obviously, very. I would compare it to like Animal Well, kind of. There's like a lot of secrets in Spelunky. Like you can like the more you dig into the Spelunky, the more you dig into it, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's going to be a lot of that energy in this UFO 50, and having like a storyline that goes throughout all the games too is just even more fascinating to me. So I just so curious on what the whole package, once it's completed, is going to be like, and how fun the game is. Like, I feel like there's a potential that one of the UFO 50 games is the game of the year this year. You know what I mean? Like, just one of the games in the 50. That's just so crazy and appealing to me.
It's kind of a genius idea if you can get enough people to look at your game when you have a big 50-in-1 type of game like this. If even 5 of these games are really, really good, they could then be like, okay, now we know that the people who played this game enjoyed these 5 games, and we can make sequels to all of them, right? And now they know exactly what to focus on moving forward as a developer. It's kind of really, really smart. So, but yeah, I'm also excited. It's like you said, Steve, it's hard to do. It's hard to make it a game like this not one note in a lot of ways with each of the genres, but I am hopeful, and
Same.
I'm sure it will be very good based on what we've seen so far.
Heck yeah.
September 18th Yeah, I can't wait. Steve, do you have any other ones to shout out since I kind of took your number one here, I feel like?
Yeah, I won't go super long on it, but I will give a shout out to a game called Pedal Runner. Is this your last one, Seth?
No.
Okay. It could have been, because Pedal Runner is a Game Boy Color style turn-based RPG, very much modeling itself after Pokemon or that type of game. Not Pokemon strictly, but it is done up like in sort of that classic style, but seems to be a little bit modernized. And it just looked like a really cool game. We have tons of retro throwbacks, but I do feel like there's like a little bit of a wind behind Game Boy Color nostalgia right now between stuff like this and like Mina the Hollower, which is kind of halfway between Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. So, yeah, just a gorgeous looking game, something I had never seen or heard of before, and one that it just seems like something I would play.
Holy moly, the backgrounds, the amount of stuff going on in this game is
I know.
incredible. It's just one of those things where it's like, yes, it does look, it brings upon that art style, the nostalgia of what we remember.
Yep.
But it just crams so much stuff onto the screen, and there's so many lights and colors everywhere. It looks awesome. Yes. I did not see that one, I don't think. So I'm happy that you pointed that one out.
I was just going to say it's Pedal Runner, like the flower, P-E-T-A-L.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Not like
pedal, like a bike.
yeah.
But yeah, what's your last
Either
one,
way.
Captain?
So my last one is short and sweet. I just saved it for the end so we can kick it off with a bang here. But I thought, obviously we all know Hyper Light Breaker. I thought the announcement that there was going to be co-op in Hyper Light Breaker was awesome. So
Yeah.
It's
That's
pretty
cool.
basic. We know what Hyper Light Breaker is already, but the fact that there's going to be co-op in that game and you can play with your friends is incredible, and honestly makes it. I'm not a big co-op fan, but I wouldn't say that. Like I don't typically gravitate towards games that have co-op because of the co-op. But when I already think I'm going to enjoy a game and there's a potential for co-op, that makes me even hotter on it. So very cool.
Yeah, and they announced early access for that coming
Soonish,
really? If not already out, right? Sometime in summer. So I'll wait until the 1.0 release, but still, good news. Give me that game.
For sure.
Yeah. I had one last one to shout out before we head over to our picks today. It was Mixtape. And I would honestly, have you guys seen anything about Mixtape?
Yeah.
It's the Artful Escape team, and they're making kind of like a coming of age, like Spider-Verse looking style, like animated wise. And it's kind of like a jukebox musical a little bit, where it's like a bunch of like popular music, like set to like vignettes and things from this teenager's life, and I feel like it's going to be more of a vibes game more than like super mechanic heavy or anything, but it definitely looks beautiful and one I'm definitely going to be playing. So
yeah, they licensed a lot of music that it like very fitting.
Yeah, like Devo and Smashing Pumpkins, and just like runs the gamut of like 80s and 90s music, it looks like, in early 2000s. So definitely going to be one to keep on your radar if you're into, like, I guess maybe like Sayonara Wild Hearts ish, kind of like Steve's ears perked up a little bit when I said that. But yes, definitely gives a little bit of that energy in some respects. So I definitely have that one on my radar to check out when it comes out.
Same.
Very cool.
All right. Well, I guess it's time. We did bring some indie picks today. So what we do on this show, IndieQuest, is we have this ever-growing list of indie games called the Quest Log. There's 2 sections to the Quest Log. The main quest, which is an excellent game. A 10 out of 10. You could recommend it to anybody, and they're going to have a great experience. A certified banger, if you will. And the side quest, which is still a recommendation. There may be a caveat or two. It might be a little bit niche. It might be just for fans of that specific genre, but it's still a great game you should play. So, who wants to bring their first indie pick today?
I volunteer as tribute.
So you leaned in pretty hard, so I'll let you have it.
I think that my discussion, although I always say this, right? Oh, I think this is going to be a pretty short and sweet discussion, and then it ends up turning into a longer discussion based on what you guys say. But I think this should end up being a quick little rundown. I was in between 2 different games, and the game that I didn't choose this time, I'm still kind of chewing on, and also I feel like it's almost going to be one of those games that I gatekeep a little bit. We've done this with some games in the past, like Tunic, where we really enjoy a game, and for whatever reason, we just don't bring it to the show. I guess maybe I just need to formulate my opinion on it more. I enjoy it so much, I want to do it as much justice as possible. So I decided to play a different game. And honestly, even at that time, when I started playing this game that I'm bringing to the show, I was still going to bring the other one. But after playing through some of this game and then eventually finishing, I was like, oh, this is good. I really want to talk about it in IndieQuest. So I decided to play a little game called Cookard. Have you guys ever seen the game Cookard? Cookard.
I was like, how do I spell this?
Yes,
thing?
I know. It's strange.
I have not heard of this game, but I've never heard of any game you bring unless Devolver Digital publishes it. So that's what I expect. That's what I'm here for. Wow. I am ready to hear you talk about this game based on screenshots.
This is not what This is not what I expected. When
This is a game that I don't know, a game genre that I don't know that we have ever featured on IndieQuest. So I'm happy to be able to do so. So Cookard, released this year, May 10th of 2024, developed by Panisha Game Dev, Panatia, not entirely sure how to pronounce that. Platform is only PC. So this is a card-based resource management cooking game. Very strange little bit of genre soup there.
Yeah.
Before I get into the game details, because that is really what we're doing here, it's very story light, and I'll say right now, there is no story. All you're doing is cooking for customers as they, quote unquote, come into your restaurant. I will describe how this game looks. To me, this game is a little bit earthier toned Yoshi's Island kind of art style. It's very crayon drawn. Everything on each of the cards that you play look like they were drawn with crayons. The background is very much a kind of a diner or kitchen, very basic palette, but it's not a 3D game, right? So people aren't actually coming into your restaurant. Everything is laid out almost like a game board, and then there's cards that stack on top of each other as you play. So please do yourselves a favor, anybody listening that is mildly interested in anything I've talked about so far, go check out screenshots. It is 2D. There are cards, and it is very aesthetically pleasing. Like, I really like the way this game looks. There's also a checklist that is on the left side that deals a lot with what you have to do in the game. So it's set up in a way that makes a lot of sense, but at the same time can get very chaotic as things clutter up later on in the game. Music. There is a single song that plays the entire time you play. It starts off and it almost sounds like someone puts a vinyl on a record player and starts that record, kind of scratches at the beginning and then goes into some piano and very chill. To me, it's really good. It's a really good song, but it sounds like anytime I go to YouTube and I type in chill lo-fi beats, this is a song that would appear in that playlist, right? It is the chillest lo-fi beats of all chill lo-fi beats. There's a kind of a drum beat in the background that gets your head nodding a little bit as you're playing, and the piano continues to go on. It's very good song. Honestly, probably will see it at some point in the future. Of course, I'm going to have to layer it in here, but I do think it deserves a full listen on something like an IQ OST at some point. But with all that, we will finally arrive at the gameplay, what we're doing here. So, everything is presented on cards. The customers are on cards. Your oven, your stove, all your equipment are presented on cards. And then all the ingredients are also on cards. So you have to take these cards, drag and drop them on different things to get them to mix together depending on what the ingredients or what the directions are calling for the recipes when you're actually creating the food. So I will describe the basic game loop, what this goes through. So we start with the customer. Customer walks in the door. There's like a little card off to the right that's a queue line that has customers walking in. You can go and grab that customer and drop them on the table card. Once they're on that table card, they will have a thought bubble that says, this is the kind of food I want. Click on that thought bubble, whatever food it is, it will drop down in the bottom right and give you kind of a list of different things that you can do with that food. But if you click on the food itself, it will give you ingredients on how to make it. So then you go from there. So let's pretend like the first customer that walks in wants a baguette. Okay, I know that they want a baguette. I will then need to go and open up from, you can go to the store later on and buy things, but it gives you some of these bundles at the beginning of ingredients. I will need to get a certain item, specifically flour, and take that flour to the whisk, and also need to get water, which there's a water pump at the beginning, and later on you get things that will produce water in a lot quicker fashion. But at the beginning you have to click on this water pump to get the water cards to come out of it. But if you put the flour and the water on the whisk and then click a couple times, it will create dough. I put that dough into the oven. It'll cook for a couple seconds and then create a baguette. I feed the customer that baguette by dragging and dropping the baguette card onto the customer. Customer eats, gets full. Yay, happy customer. My reputation, there's a little reputation scale that will go up. They will give you a little bit of money and they will leave a dirty dish. You can take that dirty dish and wash it. That makes you money. And repeat. That is cookered. Makes sense, right? It is a resource management. You're dragging and dropping and cooking. And the big addictive loop of this game, and why I would recommend it to almost anyone, is that you end up multitasking with multiple customers coming in. They all want different things. You need to get different ingredients. You're opening up all sorts of different ingredient packets, putting them in different places to create the different other ingredients or foods that you need. Sometimes you need to use the oven. Sometimes you need to use the stove. You're kind of moving back and forth and doing all sorts of stuff. The beginning is very, very low key, but every customer that comes in has a timer. And if that timer runs out, then your reputation falls. So, do you guys have any questions about, I will talk about the checklist off to the left side, but about the main gameplay loop, do you guys have any questions?
Is it supposed to get, like, does it get very stressful or very chaotic? Because this game literally looks like solitaire overcooked. Like,
yes. Yes, the solitaire call out is a very good one. So each of the ingredients kind of stack on each other like they do in solitaire. You can see each of the names at the top, but you can only see the picture for the bottom one. I would say that yes, it can get a little bit stressful, but there are ways to manage it by it depends on the type of person you are. If you are a fairly organized person, or at least remotely organized, you can kind of take each ingredient and put them in their own stack. And then you kind of know exactly where all those ingredients are when you need to create that food. That's what I did. If you're chaotic, then you're going to have stuff all over the place and it's not going to make sense. This game almost forces you to be a little bit more neat and organized and make sure stuff is where it's supposed to be, so you understand where it is. So if I'm in a normal kitchen, right, I'm not going to have my salt in a cupboard here today and then in a different cupboard tomorrow, right? Your salt's always where your salt is. And that is how you need to treat this game. I'm going to have a column of eggs over here. That's always where my eggs will be. And I know exactly where I need to go grab it when I need an egg. So yes, it takes a little bit of time to learn, but you learn to multitask very well and it becomes a very organized mess, which is kind of how a lot of kitchens are, especially when you're cooking.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever played Cooking Mama or any of those type of games?
I have not. Is this similar to Cooking Mama?
It somewhat reminds me of that. It's like Overcooked and things like that, where you get like so for like Cooking Mama, you have a kitchen with different stations that you have to like cook different foods at, and then like the orders will start coming in, and you just got to keep up with the orders as they come in, and they start piling up. So you have to be multitasking. Yeah. So it sounds similar to that, but like you said, like a solitaire version of it.
Right. Yes, I would say that. Yes, it is very similar to that. The checklist is kind of where the multitasking goes up to a completely different level. So there's a checklist on the left side of the screen, and usually it's like, create this type of food. As soon as you have done that, okay, I get a check next to that, and I'm done with that part. But then there are things like, oh, I need to create an upgraded version of my oven. and you have to click on it and figure out how to do that. You have to do all this stuff while you still have hungry customers coming in. So you're bouncing back and forth, and sometimes you have to pick and choose. Sometimes it's like, well, I need to get this checklist item done, so I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of reputation this round. I'll let the hungry customer leave because I'm not going to give them something they'll end up leaving, and I will lose a little bit of reputation on that bar of reputation in order to create that better oven, and then eventually get that checklist down to as far as I can, because a lot of the checklist items, like the second oven, are going to create an atmosphere in my restaurant that's going to make it so I am not taking as long to do things, right? At the beginning, you're almost clicking everything. I'm clicking the water pump. I'm clicking the generator. I have to click in order to actually get the electricity to work so that my appliances will cook. Whereas later on, once you get the upgraded versions of things, some of it will do it automatically. So now I don't have to constantly click on stuff. I can actually just put the ingredients over there and they'll make on their own, and I can focus on something else, right? So it's a very good idea to go through the checklist. And honestly, the way you actually beat this game is to get all of the items done on the checklist. So I think that is all I have to talk about regarding Cookerd, unless you guys have any other questions.
I mean, it seems like a relatively simple game with a pretty straightforward goal. I will also point out that it is free on Steam.
Yes.
So anyone can, if this sounds even the tiniest bit interesting to you, you can just go play it right now, which is really cool.
Yes, one of the
burying the lead right there with the price,
right? I was going to mention that in the verdict. It is absolutely worth checking out because of that, solely because of that. That's exactly why I checked it out, was because it released within the last month or so and popped up in recommended new releases. And I was like, okay, this game is free. Why not check it out? It has an aesthetic that I enjoy. It's got some music that I can see on the Steam page or listen to on the Steam page in one of the videos. I'm like, yeah, I mean, why not? I am kind of in between what I want to do in terms of gaming right now, and this seems like a chill, just kind of put it on and do it a little bit whenever I want to game. And that's exactly what it is. That's why I recommend it so highly to everyone out there, regardless of where I put it on the quest logs, because it's free and it is a perfect time wasting type game when I'm in between other games. It's awesome for that.
Yeah. Two reviews I'll throw out before you give folks your verdict off of Steam. One, someone says, I just wanted to try it for 5 minutes, and I spent a whole hour feeding hamsters.
Yep.
And then this one's for you, Josh. They say, way too stressful. I'd rather play Dark Souls.
There we go.
I don't know that I ever actually answered the whole stressful thing. A lot of these types of games where you're having to manage a lot of resources like this can be much more stressful than this game is. This game is not that stressful. It's pretty easy.
Nice.
So if anybody out there's like, oh, this is, you look at a screenshot and there's stuff all over the screen. Yes, it does become like that eventually. But like I said, if you're even remotely organized in any part of your life, you can play this game. And I enjoy a game a lot where when I go into it, I can play it for 15 or 20 minutes and get a couple things done off that checklist and feed a couple customers and make them happy. And by the time I close out that game and then work or go do something else, I feel accomplished. That is what I love about this game. So many mobile games do a similar thing where you can hop in, play for 15 minutes, and feel good about whatever that gaming you just did. Cookerd does that very well. So, with that, Cookerd is a side quest game for me. But, like the perfect side quest, we talk about that there are games out there that were built to be side quests. The developer knew when they put this game together that our version of a side quest would be that type of game, right? Mm-hmm. Cookerd is absolutely that. It is going to take you between an hour and 2 hours to finish it, but those are going to be very fun, very relaxing, hour and 2 hours. Yes, it can be a little bit stressful at times once you understand the loop. It just becomes this addictive thing. So, side quest, yes, but I still recommend everyone out there go check it out, especially since it's free on Steam.
Yeah, really cool.
Awesome.
Plus, I'm not trying to call out your motivations here, but for any crossover listeners that also enjoy Polykill, here you go, a free food-based game for you to enjoy.
And that's exactly where I put it on my bingo, buddy.
I knew it. That's a beautiful thing.
Oh, I do want to give you kudos. You always you always just say a name I've never heard of lately, at least. I feel like that's what you've been trying to do. I like specifically, but hey, it's nice. It's nice to get some obscure stuff thrown out there.
Yeah, we were joking in the Discord that of the three of us, that Captain is the tastemaker because he's the guy that brings the weird stuff no one's heard of. I usually bring stuff that's like 10 years old, and Josh brings stuff that is like he's helping the SEO out, right? He's making sure that we get the stuff in there that gets the eyeballs on us. So we all have our role to fill, but you definitely come in as the savior for people, recommending a lot of cool games.
I am very sure that we will see a beat tweet in the near future from Potomax and Mr. Mo on Cookert.
For sure.
Like that is just, especially they heard an hour to 2 hours. Oh yeah, I am in. Free? Absolutely.
They're already playing it right now as they're finishing the episode,
exactly.
pretty much. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's where Potomax heard that I've never heard of it before, and he's like, well, then I gotta beat it. I only play games no one's heard of.
Right, exactly.
Awesome.
All right,
Cool.
awesome. So, Steve, do you want to go or do you want me to go? I'll let you choose.
How meaty are you feeling? Do you feeling like a closer, or are you feeling like the meat on the sandwich?
I think we could go a little bit on this one that I have. So either way.
All right, I'll go next. And you can shut us down here. So I think that most folks will not be surprised to know what game I'm bringing today. You leaned it. Do you guys want to guess what I'm about to bring? Do you have any thoughts on what it's going to be?
I know what it is.
Yeah,
I can guess.
Go ahead.
You want to
Josh.
guess first, Seth? Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that you had finished Laurel. I thought, is Talos Principle technically an indie game? I think so,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was going to be either that or the sequel. So I would have been
guess,
wrong.
but yes. I did finish Lorelei and the Laser Eyes as of 11:35 last night. So here we are.
Nice. Heck
But
yeah.
yes, we're talking Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. For folks that are unfamiliar with this game, it is developed by Samogo. Importantly, that is the studio that did Device 6, but even more importantly, to my tastes, the studio that did Sayonara Wild Hearts. And also important to my taste, is published by Annapurna Interactive. So on my quest to inevitably bring every Annapurna Interactive published game, here's one checked off the list. It was released on May 16th, 2024, and as of right now, when we're recording this, it's available only on PC and Switch. Although I would be shocked if ports to Xbox and PlayStation don't show up at some point in the future, especially with Annapurna behind them. But Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is my one-line description of this would be that it is an atmospheric puzzle box escape room. So imagine taking the concept of an escape room and blowing it out to the size of the mansion from Resident Evil. So if you were playing Resident Evil and you took out all the zombies, still a little bit of the tense atmosphere, but you said no more zombies and just puzzles, that's what you get from Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. So it is a very simple game in terms of premise and its controls, but it is a very complicated game in terms of what you actually have to work out and do. The actual act of playing it it's almost like they designed it for mobile. It is a game that only has one button that you ever use. So, you use the joysticks too to move around, and it does have it looks like it should have tank controls because, again, it's very Resident Evil-y, but you just run around with the joystick. And then you interact when you get close enough to an object, you can interact with it, and you press any button on the controller. You can interact with the button if you're playing on Switch, with A, B, R2, you can do whatever you want. They all just interact. And then if you're not next to an object that you can interact with, pressing that button opens the menu. And there's a bunch of options in the menu. And if you want to close out of the menu, you actually have to go up into the, navigate up into the corner and click a little X, because, again, there's only one button. You can't press B to back out of the menu. They really stuck to their one button shtick, I guess, which I'm not really exactly sure why. That's not the core conceit of the game, and it's not super relevant. It was just it mattered to them for some reason.
Do you feel like they could have benefited from since it's not the core conceit, could they have benefited from multiple buttons doing different things?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't actually put it as like a legitimate major critique, but like in my ideal world, yes, they could have, because there are certain situations where it is a very notes-heavy game, and I'll get into that in a minute, but you're referencing material a lot that is in your menu. And sometimes you're standing at the puzzle that you're trying to solve, and you're like, oh, I got to look up that document that I have. And the only way to do it with the one-button control scheme is to like rotate your character to face away from the object, so you can press the button to open the menu to look at the notes, and then read it, and then rotate back. When it would have been so much easier to just give me a menu button.
Right.
Or like the number of times I forgot that you can't just back out of a menu because I have so much muscle memory, and I ended up clicking one menu layer deeper because that's all you can do unless you go up to the X. Ridiculous. So you'll get used to it eventually, but it is a little bit of a strange setup. Speaking of setup, the sort of like narrative structure, you start this game out and you play as the titular Lorelei. And she shows up at this old kind of what looks to me to be relatively abandoned kind of hotel somewhere in Europe. I'm not sure exactly where. And you have an invitation from this very eccentric, like magician type character that right out the gate, you can tell the type of game it's going to be, because the invitation is like, it's like a 2 or 3 sentence that's like, I invite you to my hotel. I look forward to you visiting next year. And then in the upper corner, it has like the date that the letter was sent, and it has like a little underline under the year that it was sent. And then like the very first thing to do is you go up to the gate, and they'll be like, oh, you need to, what year is it to open the gate to this hotel? So you have to reference your notes, see, okay, this is the year they had in the letter, but in the letter it said that it's next year that I was actually going to be visiting, so I have to know to increment that up 1, and that's the keypad code. So that type of puzzle at the absolute like bare minimum. And then you get into the mansion, and you're just 100% set loose. This game is very non-linear in its structure. You start the game out, and honestly, I was almost overwhelmed. I don't know. Some people saw me stream this game. I streamed the first couple hours of it, and I wasn't actually doing that much puzzle solving in the 2 or 3 hours that I streamed. I was just gathering information. Basically. Yeah. Like I ended up with like dozens of pages of notes and like a checklist that was like 20, 30 items long of all this stuff that I needed to do. And it wasn't until kind of right after that point off stream where I sort of like hit my first bit of momentum, found a puzzle that I needed to, and like got my train on the tracks.
Do you feel like, I know maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but because of that the initial hurdles or the barricade to actually solving anything, do you feel like a person who is not accustomed to these types of games would get frustrated and then eventually stop playing if they don't? I feel like with most games, if we don't get rewarded for our efforts, at least fairly early and a little bit to make us feel kind of smart, then you end up being like, well, what am I even doing here? You know, that type of thing. Yeah.
They might. I think that the average person probably won't have the experience I have. I think I was a little poison-brained by the kind of completionist-y way that I play games. You know, years of turn-based RPGs where I'm constantly asking myself, what's the wrong path so I can choose that one first to get the treasure chest, has set me up to basically be like, I need to gather all the resources available to me first before I do anything. And I think most people will probably find a few things and then like start pulling one thread faster than I did.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a potential shortcoming at the very beginning of the game, but I actually don't think it'll happen to most people. In fact, I have a friend who she and I are very much in lockstep about the types of games that we really like. And especially these types of like puzzle games that we really like. And she did not have that experience. She just kind of like hit the tracks and was off the ground running. So it might have just been how I approached the game. But once you get over that hump, or if you don't ever hit that hump, it is an extremely non-linear game. As I mentioned, you can do basically any puzzle as soon as you discover it. There are, of course, you know, you have to do this puzzle to get this item to let you solve this next puzzle to let you get this next item, etc. So there are like sort of certain paths that you'll have to walk down. But pretty much everybody playing this game will have a different experience in terms of the order that they solved things, just based on kind of their natural intuition, the types of puzzles that they favor, how their brain works, what other games they've played that have maybe had similar puzzles, because there's a really wide variety of puzzles. There are puzzles that are like, more akin to, not 100%, but maybe more akin to something like Animal Well, where it's like, are you paying attention to the world that you're exploring?
Right.
And you'll kind of identify things that you should be paying closer attention to than maybe you thought you needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are also puzzles that are literally like, could be in a logic puzzle book you bought from Barnes and Noble, that are literally like a one-sheeter, like here's a grid of 5x5 grid of numbers. What's the next number in this sequence?
Funny side tangent about that. We were joking with my father-in-law. We went to Books A Million, which is very similar to Barnes and Noble, to get my dad a couple books, and ended up getting a logic puzzle book for him because he just retired. So it's like, hey, here you go to keep your brain sharp.
Yep.
And I was like, if you don't want it, I will absolutely dig into it. Like, we got it as a joke, but give me that thing. And of course, I brought Mimic Logic, which is very much logic puzzles earlier in the year. So I dig that. I love a good logic puzzle.
Yeah, and they're very fun. They're also extremely clever. The entire game, it took me probably 15 to 20 hours to work my way through all of it, and I was constantly feeling like a genius the whole way through. Like, even down to the final puzzles, I always felt cool for figuring out the solution. It's also, as this is sort of unrelated to the game itself, but as I think these games often are, it was the perfect game to play with my wife in the room, because every now and again I have hit a point of exhaustion, or this is just not the type of puzzle that my brain works that way. And she was there to fill in the gaps and be like, oh, try this, do this. And between the two of us, we were able to work through everything, even if some of them we really had to scratch our heads on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this game is so non-linear to the point that pretty early in the game, I won't go into the specifics of what it is, but pretty early in the game, you get an item that lets you go to a particular room in the mansion, and that sort of like kicks off one of the main threads of the game. And I must have like stopped my playthrough, or I think I actually got that item during the stream, and I was just in my like absorbing information mode. And by the time I started playing again, I had so many like keys in my inventory and so much information. I just 100% spaced on having this item and being able to go to this place. So most players will go there within the first hour or two of the game. I didn't go to that room until 15 hours into the game. Yeah. And I actually got really stuck at one point, and I was like, these are like the 8 puzzles I don't know how to solve. And I was reaching out to a couple friends, that friend that I mentioned, and also our buddy Burger Champ, who I know had played through this game. And I was like, dude, here are the puzzles I'm stuck on. Here's the 7 puzzles. Like, what one should I focus my attention on? Because I am so stuck. And after a lot of back and forth and him sort of like asking me roundabout questions to not spoil things, we worked out that I had just never opened this door that I had the key to. Oh. And so I never went into this room. And he said, he's like, I didn't even know it was like, I am blown away that you got that far in the game without ever going in that room. I had so much like accumulated like mental resources that when I got into that room, it was just like dominoes falling. I was like, puzzle, because I had so many component pieces.
That's awesome.
So it was really fun the way that we ended up going through it. It actually made for like a more interesting experience. But you'll find, like I said, notes everywhere in this game, and like every piece of information you find is relevant. You'll find books, you'll find article clippings, you'll find signs in front of paintings, you'll find paintings, you'll find audio-visual recordings, you'll find everything. And they all can be used to like solve these different puzzles and work out different things. You'll need to, also work out some logic using stuff outside of the game, like Roman numerals and stuff like that. They expect you to have kind of like a basic understanding. It really is, to my brain, it's very puzzle escape roomy. So if you've ever done an escape room, the type of information that they'll like lean on you to know, like military time, it's that type of thing. And in the end, I think the puzzle difficulty was actually kind of spot on. Like I said, there were plenty of puzzles that I sort of like sat down for 5 minutes, had to think on it, and moved on. And then there were plenty of puzzles that it took me a long time to solve. Either way, this game keeps track of everything for you, and you're still going to need notes. So the game, in its own menu, anytime you find any piece of information, any document that you will ever need for a puzzle, it stores it in a giant list that you can recall at any time. It also keeps a running like audit trail of every action you've done in the game, every puzzle you've solved, every room you've unlocked, etc. And you have a big list of like possessions. And the game keeps a very diligent checklist of all of the unanswered questions that you've discovered, everything that you've not done yet. And so you at all times have all of the resources and all of the questions in front of you. And I still ended this game with like 8 pages of handwritten notes. Like you are jotting so much stuff down. You're working out so much information. You're constantly like having to like visualize things differently. So you're writing it out, or you're having to like being like, this is going to be important later. I'm going to need it. So I'm going to write this down and see when it comes back up. Yeah, just like creativity packed into every corner. And you guys know I'm a sucker for a game where I'm taking written notes.
It has a very much, so far your description reminds me of playing Lock, where you gotta like, there's this little tiny hint here and there and I gotta write it down, or there's a logic puzzle with different colors, I gotta match the colors up, whatever it is. But yeah, it definitely gives that same energy so far from your description.
Yeah, and if I was to describe like the sort of like inspirations relevant to my tastes or to the listeners' familiarity based on the show, Lock is definitely one of them, where it has some of that sort of like that type of puzzle, that sort of critical thinking. And there's also some real Outer Wilds energy to the structure of this game. The way that Outer Wilds was just this big clockwork universe that you could explore, this solar system, and you could kind of go in any direction, pursue any curiosity, and then the information you discover would help you expose other layers that you either did or did not know existed. Very similar, just shrink the solar system down to the scope of a mansion, a 3-floor mansion, right? And the surrounding forest and neighborhood.
Yeah, you're pretty much saying like, let's make Steve's perfect game. It's Outer Wilds with a little bit of Lock. Am I the creators of Sayonara Wild Hearts? Like, it's just like
it does read like a Mad Lib that I gave you the answers to, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you need. It's my kind of game. What can I say? Something I wanted to mention about the notes too is that the game knows that you need notes. Not only does it tell you up front in the game, but they knew it so well that Annapurna put out a notebook a physical notebook you can buy and have shipped to you from the store. And I actually think that was a really helpful resource, because even though it's not giving you any information that isn't in the game, the notebook they give you has like a bunch of blank pages for you to write your own notes in, but it also has several sheets of like reference material for like Roman numerals and phonetic alphabet and stuff that you're going to need. And it also has some blank templates for some of the like major puzzles in the game. So when you get to them, you have like a template to like put your notes into in a very clean way.
Did you know prior to buying that notebook that those pages were in there, or did you discover them when did you think it was just going to be a notebook? You thought it was going to be a college ruled notebook with the logo of the game on the cover, and you were just like, I'm a collector and I want it. Okay.
Yes. That's what I thought. And I was so dedicated to the bit that even just knowing that, I still was like, after that stream, I was like, I'm not going to play this game again until I get my notebook, because they obviously want me to do this, right? So I want what I think of as kind of the ideal experience of playing it with this companion notebook off to the side, which was great. Although my decision to do that is what caused me to miss that one room, because it meant that there was like a 1.5 to 2 week gap from my first play session to when I actually like started playing it. So, maybe not the greatest decision in the world, but so yeah, that's how the game plays. In fact, it's so much like Lock that 800 Pixel Gorilla, friend of the show, actually tweeted out Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, like a trailer to it, and was like, hey, anyone that likes my stuff, this game rules. You should go play this game. So it gets the 800 Pixel Gorilla seal of approval. So yeah, you're running around the mansion. It is kind of tense. So when I reference Resident Evil, that's not 100% just because it's in a mansion. It's not a scary game at all, but it's the type of game where like, again, maybe like some parts of Outer Wilds where you're like, you're not sure if you're supposed to be scared or not. You're just a little on edge. Like you're a little unnerved by the situations, especially interactions with the characters. The character conversations that you meet almost have like a Suda 51 or like a Killer 7 sort of like unnatural, uncanny or like uncanniness to them, where as you're talking to them, you're like, I don't trust anyone in this world. I'm very off put by all of you. It's very creepy. And that is all like sort of, I think, enhanced by the fact that this game is entirely in black and white and like kind of has a sort of vintage aesthetic. Certain things are like blurred or a little bit vague. And so that also makes you like not be able to see everything as clearly and makes like dark areas very dark. And so you're like, should I be scared? Should I be nervous? But it's not a scary game. So this is not something you need to wait till October to play if you're like waiting for the spooky season. Very much not that. Mm-hmm. Other like sort of relevant components of the game, you will come across like American dollars, which are sort of the only collectible in the game, the only non-puzzle thing to do. And it's not even a collectible. It's just they let you purchase different things in the game's world. And I won't give away what any of those are, but I will say that the game is smart because up front they kind of give you like one way to spend your money, and then the game says like, hey, there's other things you can buy, so I'm not saying you have to save all your resources, but like, maybe don't blow all of your money on this one thing. And that was very true. I was like, I don't know if this was like intentional to the design or what, but I was always like sort of barely with the economy keeping up to the thing I wanted to get next, which is very cool. And none of that is like strictly required to beat the game usually, and so it's not like you can spend yourself into an unwinnable situation like King's Quest V style or something. It's just, it'll just impact the types of things you can do and when, based on what you choose to spend your money on. So yeah, really good vibey game. Scratches the noodle. Not much in terms of like music to speak of or anything like that. I mean, it does have music. It's just very atmospheric. It's very tense. There are lots of like sort of eerie, flowy piano bits that come in and out. Music and intensity will rise in moments of tension. It does every now and again give little hints of Sayonara Wild Hearts. It's obviously not like, glimmery pop star energy, but every now and again you'll hear like, was that like a little subsection of Claire de Lune but in minor key? I feel like that maybe it is. And then I won't give anything away, but there are other parts that maybe give little nods and appreciation to their past work, I will say.
Love that.
But yeah, they're not like connected stories or anything like that. I can't really go into the story. There is a story, and I can't really go into it. I will say that the sort of meat and potatoes of the story is something that you would be well served to pay attention to. And I think that the themes of the game are very interesting. It does a lot to speak to like, obviously art and inspiration, but also like how people change when they interact with inspiration and their motivations to do art and things like that. It's there's a lot to ponder. It's the type of game where when it was done, Leah and I were sitting down and sort of like exchanging our thoughts. We had two different interpretations of the story that lined up in some ways, differed in some ways, and then you go on Reddit and you read everyone else's interpretation and you're like, okay, there's a lot of reads on this game, even though there is still something concrete to grasp onto. So it's well told if you like that type of story where you can sort of impress a little bit of what you think they're saying, and the developers are intentionally cagey about not telling you what the game is strictly about. So
yeah, I had a question about the story generally. Since you said the puzzles are like non-linear, you kind of have to like, you figure them out when you figure them out, is the story the same way, or does the story still just get told to you in a linear fashion, or is it based on the puzzles? Or is that spoiler?
The story, honestly, most of it is you kind of get tricked into learning it without even really realizing it. Like, part of it is you see a lot of, like, especially early on in the game, there's a lot of things that you come across where you're like, what the hell? Like,
right.
Huh? And so you're just sort of like naturally seeking to understand what the hell the game was just doing right there. But also, a lot of the notes you find, I mean, all of the information you're finding makes sense in the context of the world and the story. So you're actually usually extracting puzzle solutions out of story information without even really realizing it. And so you'll get a pretty good understanding of the story because you've scrubbed through all these documents and various things trying to,
nice
decode them or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So that
That's cool.
said, I still didn't have a perfect handle on the story by the end, but I tend to be pretty bad about like remembering all the threads of these types of things. But I have enough of a handle, and then I did my research afterwards to know what's going on now. So
Cool.
but yeah, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes questions. Any others? That's sort of the game.
Would you recommend it? I know we already kind of discussed it. Would you recommend it to anybody who is not into the escape room genre? Or would you say go to X game first and then dabble into Lorelei and the Laser Eyes?
I think somebody that has never engaged with the type of puzzle that escape rooms offer is probably going to struggle, because I don't think that this game is like hard, but I would say that it is on the harder end of reasonable for puzzle games. Like they are really doing a lot and like constantly showing you new things. It's not like you're like, oh, okay, I understand. When they show me this, they're sort of hiding the information in this way. They almost never like reuse that.
Right.
So it's like you'll see that one time and it's like, good, you figured that out, but you're probably not going to use much again, and you have to figure out something new. So you're sort of having to work out 100+ different little mini skill sets of puzzle solving.
So it's not Through the Fire and the Flames of Guitar Hero. It's more like a Cliffs of Dover or something a little less complicated, right?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you'll be able to get through it. It's not going to maybe impress everyone at the party, but you'll be able to get through and get a solid score. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Very much so. I would put it at maybe about like the difficulty of like a Lock or an Outer Wilds if you don't look anything up. Maybe slightly harder. I mean, there's more like literal puzzles in this game. Like the one random thing I didn't mention is you find, as you're exploring the mansion, you'll find shortcuts, and it's actually pretty fun. In game, you have like a book of actual logic puzzles, and the shortcuts will relate to one of those logic puzzles. So you'll just pull it up and just stare at the screen and have to like work out that one puzzle to get like a keypad for the shortcut that'll let you navigate around the mansion better. Very fun. That's when it's at its most like Professor Layton of anything. So,
Nice.
Cool.
very cool. But yeah, if there's no other questions, we'll get right down to it. Get down to where we slot this game. I mean, come on, guys. Am I going to be a little coy boy about it? Am I going to, where's it going to go? No. This is like one of my top developers making one of my top genres and executing it extremely, extremely well. If you're a fan of puzzle games in any way, you should play this one. Like, it's interesting because there's a little bit of an effect of playing this post Animal Well was a fascinating experience because
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah. Animal Well is kind of like Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is a little bit of the puzzle you know, and Animal Well is kind of the puzzle you don't. And so depending on what you're going in for, at first there was a little bit to my experience of Lorelei where it's almost like where you eat like a sour candy or something that's really strong or sugary, and then you take a drink of like a lemonade, and the lemonade tastes kind of watered down because you have so much intense flavor already in your mouth.
Eating a Hershey's bar and then taking a drink of chocolate milk. It's like, why am I just drinking milk right now?
Yeah. It's exactly that. And so at first I was like, oh man, I even like sort of in talking to my friend, I said to her, I was like, she asked, how is it? I was like, it's great. I mean, you just played Animal Well 2, so like you're going to have to go in understanding that this is not Animal Well. But once I like got over that like transition period, it's like we have 2 puzzle games on our hands that are legitimate contenders for my favorite game this year. I don't actually necessarily know for sure where I will fall come December.
Yeah, with like some distance and like just thinking back on the year. Yeah.
And what else you play? I am more so than any year since I've known you, Steve, excited for this potential decision. Or if there's something else that comes along, it's like, oh yeah, this is that. But I have a very strong feeling that it's going to be pretty close between this one and Animal Well, and I am excited to see who pulls ahead.
Yeah, 2 absolute bangers. What is happening in 2024? I don't know. It is such a ridiculously good year for games. But yes, Main Quest, Lorelei, and the Laser Eyes. If you line up with my tastes when you listen to the show, this is a don't miss. This is like a next in your backlog type of game.
Awesome.
I need to get around to that one for sure. That's on the list that's growing. Anyway. That's my turn, I guess, right? I just completely blanked there. Speaking of 2024 games, the game I brought today is a 2024 game. It is called
3 for 3.
Yes.
2024
Yeah,
games.
3 for 3. Yeah. It is called Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom.
Oh, there
you guys
it is.
heard much about this game. Yeah,
Yes.
this game. I have a lot to say. It's actually a really fun game. All right, so it is. We'll just start with presentation. It's very N64 style presentation-wise. Very chunky, blocky, pixely graphics. Very fast, kind of wobbly as you're driving this little... you play as a wind-up toy taxi going through these levels. Very much inspired by Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, Spyro the Dragon. Like, there's a lot of like hints and references to a bunch of classic collectathon games in this game. Let me describe like what the gameplay is. It is a 3D platformer, but the biggest thing they always say in all the ads and all the things is there's no jump button. Mm-hmm. So how do you do a platformer with no jump button?
Yeah.
So you got a taxi and you're driving it around, and there is something called the flip-a-wheel. And when you click the button that's a flip-a-wheel, you do a boost. And what you end up doing with the boost is you flip over and you do a boost at the same time. But if you get good with the controls, this is, I like to say this is kind of like a Super Mario Odyssey type thing where like you start mastering the controls and you kind of learn more intricacies of the controls. So if you learn how to stall the flip-a-wheel just at the right moment, you do technically end up having a jump. So you can jump up small platforms that way. If you do the flip-a-wheel at a certain angle over a certain type of ramp, you can hit it again and then do a backflip. So it's kind of like you just got to get the feel for the controls to do the platforming elements of this game.
It reminds me of there's a triple jump in Super Mario 64. I was never very good at that game, but there's like so many different things that you can master in that game, and I assume that's similar. I have to ask though, Josh, is it difficult? Is it like something that some people that play this game are never going to get it, or like you have to understand that in order to actually complete it? Some of those more minute.
Yeah, definitely. I will say the earlier stages, they do have a pretty good level up to it. So the main character you talk to is Mario with an O, and he kind of looks like Mario, very cartoony looking, has a unibrow, just very, the parody in this game is very cheesy. There's the main antagonist is named Alien Mosk. You can kind of get where that's going there. It's a, Elon Musk joke. And there's, what the whole thing is, he's throwing gears into everybody's world, which is the collectible, and you're trying to get all these gears to make these worlds like inhabitable again and things like that. So the earlier stages, you're kind of like, all right, this is how you do a boost. Okay, you can kind of see some stuff in the distance. You're like, how do I even get over there? Whatever. let's just kind of go around this level and do the best I can, collect as many gears as you can, and move on to the next stage. And then you do that for a few levels, but then it starts to gate you like a Banjo-Kazooie with the jiggies. It's like you got to get 50 jiggies to get in this level. Same thing here. It's like you got to get 50 gears. So, okay, I'm going to go back and revisit those old levels, kind of getting more used to the controls, and then getting up into those areas where maybe you couldn't before because you just didn't realize, oh, I can actually do a backflip, or hey, if I hit the ramp just a certain way, I can get a little bit more height off of this platform. And it really rewards you for trying to break the game. Like, there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't even know if I can get up into this area, and then I end up like kind of like glitching my way up there, and there's just a hidden gear up there, and I'm like, They thought of this. They knew I was going to do that,
In the bullets of the game, they're talking about the stuff you mentioned, no jump button and stuff. And the developers have a line that literally says in bold, "We dare you, try to get out of bounds." Like, they know their audience here. They're like, yes, we gave you these tools, play with them. Yeah, see if you can beat us, which I respect that.
Yeah, and it's a 2-person team. They're from Italy. Their names are Matteo and Lorenzo, and then they got like a publisher behind them. So this is like a passion project for them. You can tell excuse me, you can tell this is their favorite genre, or this is what they grew up on, and this is like they want to bring back that feeling again. So honestly, it really does have that feeling. And if you want to, if there's one question that you see the title, Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, does it play or have any crazy taxi analogies, right? That's one thing you probably think of. Yes, it does. There are stages that are timed. So, and there are the little circles that you have to like deliver people to different areas they always have quirky things to say. And, like I said, it's very like absurdist and just random. I feel like the humor here is random. It's very like, Adult Swim energy, I would say. Right. Sometimes maybe less grotesque or but that kind of out there with video game stuff. And so there will be stages with a timer. You have to pick up people to increase the timer, but there are also collectible clocks around the map that will increase the timer too. So it's not like you're beholden to that as you're still trying to explore and find all these gears in this world. They add like stage hazards. They have little bombs that will follow you, and then you have to lead them to an area to blow up entrances. They have power-ups that you'll unlock later on. I will just give one, for instance. Later on, you'll get one that's kind of like a invincibility star, which is like a spring that you collect, and you can go through spikes and get damaged and go into water and things like that you wouldn't be able to before to find hidden star gears and things like that. I almost want to say stars because it's very much that inspiration. The music is very much inspired by every single one of those games. Like, you'll go into there's one that's like an arcade world, and it just feels like I'm in an arcade, and it feels like the 80s, and it has that feel. You go into one that's like there's one that's really directly like Bomb Battlefield. It's like almost one from one. Like, there's a boss on top of a hill that's a bomb that you have to get up to. Okay. And the music is similar to that music, but with its own like zany energy, I would say. Like, it's inspired, so they're taking their inspirations, wearing them on their sleeves. Like, literally your main character's sidekick dude is named Moria with an O. So that's not much to lean on there that's like super deep. This is like the opposite of Lorelei and Laser Eyes. You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be pondering art, and then this one's like, yeah, we're gonna go fight an alien dude, and you go collect some gears and have some fun. That's the vibes of this game.
Yeah, but dude, inside me lives two beasts. One is the Lorelei, and one is the guy that just wants to collect 1,000 trinkets in a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this game looks so sick. One of the biggest compliments I can give this is already on my wish list, but I'm watching more footage of it now. And one of the biggest compliments I can give it is I was watching like the little, as developers do, like the sizzle reel of them putting together like all of the coolest, flowiest tricks, being like, yeah, look at sort of like what the potential is of this game. Look at how, fluid and sort of combo focused the movement can be. And then I realized I am not watching the sizzle reel. Steam has like embedded someone streaming the game at the top of the page, and I'm watching a stream of the game, and it just looks that good, even though I'm just watching a random person play it. So
yeah. Yeah, and also there are more collectibles. There's not a lot, but there are coins that you can gather, and it's just a fun thing. I don't know if anything unlocks if you get them all, but you can use the coins to go into hat stores that are kind of like sub-worlds in a few of the worlds, and there's hats in there that you can collect. And then there's some that are hidden throughout the world too. So, and then there's actually some hats that you need to wear to get into secret hidden doors too. So it has that element too. So the coins don't like give you health or anything like that. There's not really quote unquote health system. It's mostly you run out of time, which would be what it is. I really didn't feel like that was debilitating to the gameplay. I feel like they usually gave you plenty of time to do the thing. And then if you like say like run out of time because you're like trying to get up to an upper area, they'll just reload you at the latest checkpoint that's nearby, and then you just get a full timer again. So it's not that big of a deal, I wouldn't say. I don't think they want to like punish you for going out of time in this game at all. So what I ended up doing with this game is I got to the point where I felt very gated, and I was like, well, maybe I'll put it down and play something else. I don't know. Like, I need to get like, I think it was like 100 and something gears, like near the last stage. And I'm like, But then I was like, you know what? Let me just poke around, in some of these older stages. And then poking around ended up being 4 to 5 hours of me just like going through every stage and collecting all the gears that I missed, So it's very much that once you get into the flow of this game, you kind of don't want to put it down. And this game has a really significant runtime. I think I put over 15 hours into it. Like, that's pretty long for a 3D platformer, I would say.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of meat on them bones, I'd say, on that one. So I just think it's a very inspired game. Every time I went into a world, I just kind of got lost exploring it. And then there's just so much, like, you could tell that they took the time to make every stage feel like a special place to be in and exist in, which is the best thing with a 3D platformer with subworlds like this. You go into like, a Mario level or like a Banjo-Kazooie level, you can tell they took the time to make it feel lived in, and each world you remember fondly. I really do think this game has that energy. Like, I can remember specific levels, and I'm going to remember specific tricks I did to get up to specific gears. It's one of those that really shined for me this year so far. I just think this game is really well polished and just a blast to play. So yeah.
I am, for one, very happy that devs are starting to realize that this art style, this aesthetic choice is a good idea in 2024 and in the last couple of years. Games like this, Frogun, Pseudo Regalia, like that is the type of stuff that guys our age are just salivating for, that nostalgia at this point. Like, just paint me that picture and I will play your game. It's so good.
Yeah, very much so. I'm hyped up on it. Honestly, I also can't wait to watch the speed runs for this game. I bet they are going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, because it's like they're gonna get to the point where they have like specific frames. You push a button at a specific time and get like a little bit more boost. I feel like, there's with the animal well, kind of like the bubble. You got the bubble and you're trying to like jump up. Like, it has that similar energy where if you get that rhythm, you're just going to be flying through these stages. It's going to look, your first hour of this game is going to look night and day for your 12th hour of this game, like, because more you play it, the more you get that muscle memory, and the more you'll just like randomly stumble into new like mechanics and movements that you didn't realize you could even do before. So I think that they just completely nailed it from that aspect. I would say when you get into this game, don't be discouraged if it feels a little weird. Like, it does feel weird when you first play it. It's one of those like, it has a unique mechanic, right? You're going to go in there, you're a taxi that doesn't jump, and then the main movement is you go forward, go back, and then you boost. That's it. Well, this is kind of weird for a platformer, but the more you like understand the intricacies, like it's really well thought out.
Yeah, you can just tell from watching footage of it that that's the case.
I always say I love a game that rewards skillful play. If I'm good at it, reward me for it. So that's very cool.
Yeah, it's definitely that type of game. And like, it does the thing with the collectathon. There's always more gears to collect. Like, when you hit the final game part of the game, it's going to be like, okay, you got another whole pool of gears to collect. So there's a way to probably 100% this, and then get like, I didn't do the 100%. Maybe I will, because it is so fun to play. But there are sometimes I'm like, okay, it says there's one more gear in this area. I have nowhere else to go. I don't have any idea. Maybe I have to look up a guide for it or something. But definitely we'll scratch that itch and then some. And then I think the music is great. Like I said, the graphics are very eye-catching and beautiful and look great for the what they're going for, and the story is whatever. Like, it's not that important. You're gonna have a good time in the worlds, I'll say. Like you might roll your eyes at a couple of the dialogue boxes, like, okay, whatever, that's a cheesy ass joke, but that's fine. Like, it suits the whole theme of the game. So, any other questions for Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom?
Just can't wait to see where you put it on the quest log, buddy.
Yeah, for real.
Okay. This one was kind of weird because at first, when I was gonna bring this, I was like, "Oh, that's probably a side quest," But then I sat with it, and I was thinking, dude, this game is very memorable. Like, I keep thinking about it, and I had so much fun playing it. It's gonna be a main quest for me. I think that if you're nostalgic for this era, definitely give it a shot. Even if you're not, I think that anybody is gonna at least have fun with the first 4 or 5 hours of it, and then if you hit a wall and you're not interested in collecting more, that's fine. But I think the stacks asking price is around $15 to $20, very cheap and affordable. You'll have plenty of time and, get enough out of it, even if you don't chase it to the end to get all the collectibles. I think you're still going to have a good time.
Josh, do you know, is this on anything but PC?
So far,
it's not. I was frantically Googling it to see if it's on Switch or a console, because I'd really prefer to play it on console if I could. This is the type of game, though, that actually, while you were talking, I have a list on my phone of all the 2024 games, and I kind of like roughly order them by how much I need to play them before Game of the Year season comes up. And this went like very high on the list. And I was like, I'm going to have to play this on Steam if it doesn't come out somewhere else, because it just looks too good.
They haven't said nothing about a console release yet either. I was kind of looking before the show, trying to see if, maybe there's a PlayStation release. Then I could be like, Steve, go play it, get your trophies or whatever, But nope, nothing yet. So we'll just wait and see on that one. But yeah, right now it's only on Steam. Plays great on the Steam Deck. That's what I played it on like the whole game. Like, I played it all on the Steam Deck, played perfectly fine. Really great on that if you have one of those. I'm sure I play fine on PC with the controller, just the same. But I know people prefer to have the console if they can most of the time. So,
yeah, I think this is a underrated one for this year. I think that it's pretty popular for 2024 indies, but 2 recent and all reviews on Steam are overwhelmingly positive, 99%. But still under 600 total reviews, and it's been out for a couple months. So you would think, a lot of games, they're up to the thousands by that time. I really hope that this one gets on more people's radar, because it is a very interesting, cool game.
It's one of those, like, it's not like you're going to hear it with Devolver. It's not even a big publisher or anything. I feel like it's kind of like just scooting by. I want this to, like, rocket by so I could see a sequel and DLC, yes. And I want more of this game and more of this team doing more stuff, because I just had a great time with it,
Yeah. And side note, but I wish that developers would always link their development page. I don't like when you click in Steam on a developer's page and it brings you to the publisher's page.
Yes.
But what I was going to say is, it speaks to, I think, the variety of taste on this podcast and the incredible year we're having, the 3 games that we all brought. Like, the huge variety of quality games in a bunch of different genres and, like, to different people's tastes, and they all are coming out in 2024, and there's still so many that we're not getting to as well. Like, 2024 truly is just a flood hose of good indies that is impossible to keep up with.
It's almost to the point now where I am thinking about what I want to play next, and almost everything is a 2024 indie at this point. It's like, man, I really need to find time to fit in older games to be able to bring here. But I just like want to play the new stuff. I don't want our podcast to just become, oh, look at this new thing that came out all the time. Like, we want to reflect upon the old stuff too. And I guess we did that with Bastion, of course. But I just feel like there's going to be a lot of points in time in the near future where I'm like, here's another new game. Here's another new game. And that's just the way it is. But it's just a great year.
Really is.
Yeah, like what someone's theory was, like, it's COVID. Like, people got together during when they couldn't
Yes.
work or go in the office, or they quit their job or relocated because of COVID like 4 years ago.
Yep.
This would be about the timeline
Yeah.
for all these indie studios to kind of formulate and then get a game out. And so I feel like everybody's just hitting right now because of that. That's at least a theory I heard online. So
That makes sense.
Thank you all.
Yeah, seriously.
yeah, yeah, we're eating good out here, right?
Yeah,
It's a
for
great
sure.
time to have an indie game podcast.
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
is. Yes.
So true.
All right, we got 3 games today. We got Cookered, which was a side quest. We got. Did I say that right? It's like Cook Card. Like, it's Cook in the word card put together, right? And so it's Cook Card.
I guess
Cookered.
so. Yeah, that's a good point. I never
Yeah.
really picked up on that,
Okay.
but that probably is true. But yeah, I say cookered, but yeah, it could very
Yeah.
well be cook card too.
Cook
So,
Card.
yeah.
Cook Card. I don't know.
Cook Card.
Cookered sounds better anyway. And then we got Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which is a main quest, and then Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, which is a main quest, and you could not ask for a more variety of picks there.
Seriously.
Something for everyone there for sure.
Well, that's going to about do it for the show. What we do at the end is some plugs. You can find the show at IndieQuest Pod on Twitter. You can send emails, questions, comments, concerns, IQOST picks, games we should play. Any comment, we'll most likely read it or at least have a discussion behind the scenes and make it a thing. Hey, send us some stuff. We always love hearing from you guys. Steve, where can they find you on the internet?
Twitch, Twitter, everywhere else is Blinkoom. It's Blink OOM. M like the last letter of room. And you mentioned OST, so I'll just let folks know that next episode will be an IQ OST episode, and it has nothing to do with the fact that the Elden Ring DLC is dropping around that time. It is entirely unrelated. Anyways, Captain, where can they find you?
You can find me at Captain Drachma on Twitter, and of course in the Polymedia Discord, best place on the internet. And if you want to get into that Discord, head on over to your local Patreon, type in Polymedia, and jump into I believe the first tier gets you into the Discord, and come hang out and chat. Josh, where can they find you?
They can find me at Frantic Society, and you can find our network. Speaking of Polymedia, we're part of the Polymedia Network, which is a big bucket of awesome shows about movies, nostalgia, video games. If you like the show, there's definitely something on the network for you, so go check that out, polymedianetwork.com. And you know what? I'm going to close this out today. I'm just going to take it upon myself to do it. For once,
Man,
yeah.
I can't wait for this.
Whether you're stuck in a mansion looking for secrets, whether you're playing cards to cook some food, or you're driving people in taxis, whatever your profession is, have a great day, and happy Father's Day.
Peace.
Dun 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 dun.